Silouan here, my friends. Great to be with you. This might not make sense initially, but today I'm going to talk about a Jewish Hasidic mystic named Martin Buber, who lived from 1878 to 1965, basketball and connection, and how all that works together. So last weekend, we were at a basketball tournament, and I was coaching an older team, and one of my younger son was playing in a game, and he's good. And they're a good team. And two of the kids in particular on our team, and you know the type, if you spent much time at youth sport events, you know there's some kids that they don't just have the skills, but they have sort of the knowledge, the awareness, the athleticism. Like you can tell they kind of just know where to go. You know, and they may not even be the best shooter, but they got a feel. They're not robotic. And you see a lot of other kids, and you can tell they spend a lot of time with their brain going, where do I go? Kind of deal. You know what I mean? And my wife was talking to the mother of the other kid on the team that, along with my son, both kind of got that athletic, just natural court awareness that allows you to go 100% and throw yourself into something. And as they were talking, the other boy's mom brought this up, that she really thought that one of the reasons that my son and her son had it was because they didn't have phones. And neither one of our families allowed a lot of technology at home. And they had a lot of older brothers. And so they spent a lot of time outside playing, and a lot of times face to face talking about basketball and, watching basketball. And, you go to a tournament and you're riding home. If you're 13 and you got a phone, you're this the whole way home. If you're 13 and you don't have that on the ride home, what are you doing? You're talking about basketball. That's all they did. And you learn. And I got thinking about it, and, being their coach, seeing them in the summer, she's right. Because what do all the other kids on that team do? They got phones. They stare at them. They don't talk about it. You can't replace that. That's real. Human interaction, the back and forth, being challenged, real time. You can't replace that. You learn from that. Anything coming through a screen, it might be cool, might be entertaining. That's how you're seeing me now, okay? But it's not as real. It's like it's not the same by any means, okay? We know with recent studies, one of the reasons that suicide is at such a high level is due to lack of connection. Now, the way it gets discussed is not really talking about the importance of connection. It's more loneliness is bad. And so they've done all kinds of studies where they have shown that loneliness is worse for your physical health, okay, than being obese. Think about that. You're overweight, and you got a lot of friends. You're fit as a fiddle. You're lonely and you're isolated. You are going to have more health problems than this person over here just because of those connections. As human beings, we were meant to be connected. Well, your mind jumps around sometimes. And as I was driving, we got back from that tournament, and I was talking to my wife about the conversation she had. And then I thought about the data and the science that I already knew about the importance of connection and just what it does for you mentally, much less your court awareness, on a basketball court. I thought back to college, Vanderbilt University. I think I still have the sticker on this book. This book, brand new, was $6.95. I don't think it's $6.95 at a bookstore anymore, but I still got my Vanderbilt University bookstore sticker on here. But my favorite professor, I studied mathematics and psychology, Dr. Volnai Gay, and we went over this book. Now, I'm not going to go over the whole book right now, which I might later. It's called I and Thou. It's Martin Buber's sort of philosophy on life. And basically, in a nutshell, it's about connection. It's about relationship. It's also about how to be complete as a human being. You need to connect with another human being. And I just want to read one section. Now, before I do, I had this bookmark. I found this. This is kind of cool. If you're a Bible-believing Christian kind of person out there, you'll find this interesting. And even if you're not, you might. So, in the New Testament, one of the books in there is the epistle to the Ephesians. Well, this bookmark was made in Ephesus. See that? Ephesus. And Ephesus is where the Ephesians are from. And there are churches there that reportedly go back to when that book was written. So anyway, that happened to be the bookmark that I had here in my Martin Buber book. But anyway, let me read from this. The basic word IU, and he like making kind of plays on words, so he would like I-U and like it's one word. The basic word IU can be spoken only with one's whole being. The concentration and fusion into a whole being can never be accomplished by me, can never be accomplished without me. I require a you to become. Becoming I say you. And then this is the money sentence, the one I underlined. Crazy to think, man, how many years ago I underlined this. All actual life is encounter. All actual life is encounter. Connection is life. To be alive, the thing which makes us aware of our humanity is when we are in relationship with another. But it's more than me and you. That's why the thou is there. It's like, it's not just you are there and I am here and we are separate. It's that when we come together and we come into relationship with each other, we actually become more than that. You know, think about what happens, a group of friends sitting around having a conversation. The dynamic becomes the dynamic of the group. So if you're all together and the dynamic is complaining, pointing fingers, angry, you see it. That group becomes one with like anger. On the flip side, if what the group is talking about is positivity and thankfulness and gratefulness, what comes out of that group? It's the same thing. So you got a group of boys and they're into basketball and they're playing it and they're watching it and they're talking about it. What happens? That group becomes an organism of its own, which is far greater than any member of the group. And one could argue it's a multiple. Like, it's not just the addition of those members, that when they come together, it's actually bigger than that. Now, the scary part, kind of get back to the beginning, you know, you're a kid and like, you know, you're 12 and you got no friends, and you're looking on the screen, and as big as that world is, I promise you, the result of that is not the kid feeling bigger and more connected. The result of that is the kid feeling smaller and less connected, okay? And you get alone, and it's the opposite effect. It's a multiple. The highest suicide rate, okay, or should I say the highest rate increase of suicide over the last 5-10 years, teenagers. More specifically, teenage girls. And teenage girls' rate of suicide increase is off the charts. Now, why is that? I can say that as a father with a lot of girls. I got 9 kids. Girls like to talk. They like to be in community. They like to be in fellowship. Okay, they like that. They're not meant to be isolated and alone. When you've got friends that build you up, you feel bigger than yourself. You know, there's an innate instinct in any woman, you know, to be a mother, to have a family. It's how the species procreated. You want to be a group. You want to get along, okay? Well, what happens when you take that young girl and she has a technology that takes her away from that connection, and you get isolated and alone? The only feedback you get is what's coming through that phone, and your world gets smaller. All of a sudden, you're becoming not just less of yourself, you're getting further away from how we're supposed to live. And how are we supposed to live? I and thou. I am in relationship with you. I am connected with you. It's a profound thought. Now, why did I decide to talk about this today? It's because basketball practice yesterday, I was running, and I was thinking about that aspect of the kid who doesn't have their face buried in a phone and is actually talking about basketball and playing basketball and maybe watching a TV, but then talking about the game. They're learning things that you can't learn just showing up at practice a few times a week, okay? Yet all those kids want to play more. All those kids want to be better. And I got thinking, who knows how honest those kids' own parents are with them, because their parents are big fat liars too. Their parents are the ones that allow them to do that. Their parents are the ones, when we go to like a basketball tournament, there's like a 6-year-old kid on the sidelines, and instead of like running around and having to learn how to, stand up for themselves or watching the game go on, what are they doing? They're like in a tablet. What are they learning? Nothing. They're learning nothing. They're going to get on a court and look like they have no athletic ability. And it might not even be because they have no innate athletic ability. It might be just because their face has been in a tablet. And I'm like, another thing I've noticed, as people get older, they lie more to themselves. As a parent, kids will lie. They will tell you things you don't want to hear. But I'm telling you right now, as someone who travels around, giving talks all over the country, people, all different cultures, all different backgrounds, all different incomes, all different jobs, kids tell the truth more than adults. Adults lie. We want the world to fit our circumstance. We get to the point where our ambitions go away and our world's the way it is, and we want to think we made the right decisions, and we want to believe that the way we see the world is the way the world is, and we lie to ourselves. We look in the mirror and we don't always tell the truth. And it gets worse and it gets harder as you get older. And I having all these thoughts, and I see these young men in front of me, and I'm like, man, I want to be at least the one person that tells them the truth about this. And I look at them and I'm like, hey, if you learn one thing from being in this program, I want you to learn to tell the truth about yourself. I want you to know that if you're not playing more, maybe it's because you got your face in your phone too much. Maybe it's because you stayed up too late playing video games. Maybe it's because this summer, when you could have been on the court playing, you were doing something that's rotting your brain. And don't blame me, and don't blame your parents, and don't blame that kid next to you. Look in the mirror and get your head out of the phone. Get on the court, and if you don't, be okay with it. Just go, I'm not that good because I'd rather be playing video games. Just own it. Admit it. Live in truth. It's only when you live in truth that you can make a change that in any way is positive. And that is the beauty, I think, of the philosophy of Martin Buber, which, as I was skimming through this book, I'm like, I think I'm going to get into this a little bit deeper as we go forward. But one of the results of true relationship is you can't hide, man. Just like we know what's inside of us, and we know the truth of ourselves, and we know what our demons are, and we know what our fears are, okay? Just like we know that about ourselves. The deeper in relationship you get to another human being, the more they can see that, and the more they allow you to see it in them. And while in this life, before we're spirit, we may never get there, the closer and closer in a relationship that you get, where you're able to see the truth of who the other is, okay? Truth is what makes that relationship so valuable. And you see that in marriage. I don't like the fact my wife and I have gotten in some doozy of fights. I don't like the fact that there's been long periods of time where, man, I didn't like my wife. I was mad at her. But it was only by willing to go through those, not give up, not use those as an excuse to do behavior I would regret, not using those as an excuse to run away, that you begin to deal with somebody on a deeper level. Because what happens in a deep relationship, you eventually get to a point where you're like, I need to tell you something that may or may not be true, and you might get very mad at me when I tell you. But if I don't tell you, I'm going to keep it inside, and the result's going to be we're going to be separate from each other. And so I'm going to tell you this. And then they're going to do the same thing. They're going to come to a moment where they're like, I need to tell him something, and he's not going to want to hear it. Okay, but if I don't tell him, I'm going to go crazy. And if you get through those moments where you're being totally truthful, maybe you find out you were wrong, or maybe you just find out we're going to disagree. Every single time in my marriage, that takes us to a higher level. It takes us to more truth. It takes us closer to this type of relationship. Type of relationship you want to have with God, the type of relationship you want to have with your child, with your friends, with your family, where you truly feel like we are able to be in relationship and be connected because we're willing to be honest. And then that was the last point I brought up with the boys at basketball practice. If you're going to reach your potential, if you're going to be as good as you can be, you have to be able to look in the mirror and be honest with yourself. okay? And the problem with that is if you can't do that, you will do it to others. If you can't be honest about yourself, how are you going to be honest about how you feel about other people and what your motivations are and what the truth is? So it all comes back to this. In order for me to love you or thou, I got to love myself. To be honest with you, I got to be honest with myself. And it creates within me a creature, an existence, a spirit, a soul, whatever you want to call it, that is actually bigger than me because it's not just me. It's me and all these relationships that I have in my life. So hopefully I gave you a little something to think about. If you're wondering what to do with all this, I would recommend two things. One, highly recommend you read this book. It's kind of a tough read. You know, he was German, I believe. It's a translation. It's kind of dense, but I don't think much has been written better about what a deep relationship and what to be a human is. But also look in the mirror, and if you don't want to share with anybody, just write it down. I want you to write down some truths about yourself, okay, that are hard to say, and just own them, okay? And maybe all you do, I used to do this when I volunteered in prisons, and I would go in there, and one of the exercises we would have these small groups I would do. And I did this with men, with women, with young kids. We would get to this point where we like write the truth of ourselves. We like write our story, all the bad stuff we did, you know? And then when everybody had done it, I encouraged them to share whatever they wanted to share, whatever was appropriate. You didn't have to. And then once we had written it and we had shared whatever we wanted to share, we burned it, which I still don't even know how I was able to do that in a prison. I'd probably breaking some rule or law or something. I talked the chaplain into letting me do it, but we'd burn them all. And the whole point of that was, and that's who I was, but that doesn't have to be who I am now. That right now I can live in truth. That even behind bars in a maximum security prison, nothing can keep me from living in truth. And when you're in a prison, you don't got much else. You got your relationships with a few people, you got a few possessions, that's about all you got. And so if you don't have truth, you don't have much. But if you have truth, you have more than most people who seem to have a lot. So do something today to live in truth. Write it down. If you got the courage or the trust, share it with somebody. If not, that's okay. But write it down. And when we come back next time here, maybe I'll give another lesson from the good old Martin Buber on what to do with that. Oh, here, just a note I have written down. Maybe this is what I'll pick up on next time. There's always a struggle to make it a you, to get back to the womb. Basically meaning there's always a struggle between being selfish, making it about me, and making it about us. Very interesting. That's what we'll talk about next time. So I'm going to bookmark it. I will see you next time. I'm Silouan. Thanks for being with me. Peace.